No. See if it still keeps the beamer sync. Spannend, hè?
Werkt display, hè?
No. It's just, yeah, this is a very mishmash Linux. It's a Syllable server with Gobo Linux on top, and on top of that a binary distribution of the RUX desktop. And it's all very badly integrated, that's why I haven't released it. But we've been using this in-house, Bas and I, for the past 2 years. And it's a very nice transition system for us. Lost sync again. Ah, there we are. Ah, it's way too big. This is not my desktop.
Oh, dit is dat internetbesturingssysteem.
Yeah. This is not working right. Can we try the other laptop?
Yes.
It will be slower, but this is really not what we want. And now it doesn't switch anymore. This is really a problem. I think I can only I have to abort the entire desktop.
But do you need network with?
Maybe, but we'll have it, won't we?
Yeah, I'm not completely sure, but.
Ja, als die Python langs kan.
Yeah, RUX is heavily running on Python.
You have to be 120.
We'll switch to the older machine.
You have to be
Die
at
moet,
least,
moet helaas wel dichterbij. Dus die moet hier komen te staan. Ik hoop dat het dan nog doet.
Overpak.
You need to switch the cable.
Hij staat nu uit.
Ah. Ja, ja, sorry, uit, maar. De stroom staat er wel op, hè?
Mm-hmm.
The cable to the beamer.
Nou. It looked good for a very short while.
Yes, it's gone.
It's also switching from character mode to video mode now, so it loses sync again. I need to really integrate X into the Linux versions by building it from source code, but it's an incredible amount of work, so I'm still shying away from that. Could easily take me months. Now it's garbled.
It is kind of garbage.
In a similar way as just now. Oh, it works a little bit. It somehow went to a very low resolution. Oh, it's quite annoying. I know that under here are the this is not really a way to show it. I think this is something I want to demo. It's probably not going to look right. Something different. This is really annoying. Even more annoying. It's totally broken. Ah, this is not going to work. I have to abort this desktop as well. On the other beamer this was alright.
Yeah.
So it seems to have to do with this beamer.
Because it has something to do with the screen resolution.
Yeah. The computer changes its resolution apparently because the beamer is on it, and normally you can switch the resolution or where it goes with the function keys, and then the beamer just has to show it.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently this beamer tells the computer something, and
So this is an intelligent beamer.
it's not configured that way. The only thing I could try is to see if Linux Mint has better support for this.
I guess so.
I'll switch this off. Last time I tried Mint on a beamer, it also took me half an hour to get the picture
Well,
on Geo Freedom Day.
oh, okay. Oh yeah, I remember.
But that was a different Mint and a different machine.
I remember that we had this also a very modern beamer, which was very...
Yeah, I had to go into the Mint video configuration,
Okay.
which is not really what you want to do.
Dit is geen gewoon zaak. Ja, het is altijd gezakt hoor.
Yes, beamers are problems sometimes.
It only takes 2 minutes to boot Linux Mint on this machine. You know, the one that boots in 10 seconds with Syllable. feel free to take a nap or something. I hear the hard disk, so it should still be doing something. Oh, I have a picture here now. Oh wow, I've suddenly got picture on both, and I didn't want to do that before.
Please move 12.
I have 9.
You still have Linux Mint 9?
Oh yeah, this is
I
Mint.
agree.
Mint is weird.
I agree.
We're losing a good part of the picture, but let's see. I think I installed a few things here. I think. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh damn, this thing didn't work. That's a problem. I was going to start my own web browser, but it worked on Mint 11, but this is Mint 12, so now it suddenly doesn't work. I've programmed my own web browser in Red System. It uses the WebKit engine, and it uses a GTK widget on top of that, so it's an extension to my GTK binding for Red. And it works on unchanged on Syllable Workstation and on Mint 11, but on Mint 12 it doesn't work anymore. It uses different library names, similar to what we discussed about the C library between Syllable and Linux.
Okay, it's very nice.
We only have a part of the picture on the beamer. That's another problem. And we don't really have time to make many adjustments. So I'm going to my collection of Red demos on my memory stick. They're a bit older, but no, doesn't want to do this kind of stuff at all. Why doesn't it do this? this is probably because this is a fat file system and now it doesn't want to start stuff from it. That's very annoying. I can simply do this in Workstation and Syllable.
So it's a security issue of Linux Mint. It says don't start fat systems.
Something like that.
Uh,
I'll have to copy it to local. Let's see.
right. Copy.
See if I can copy it on the desktop.
Personal map.
Or is this Linux Mint 12 for server instead of client?
No, this is desktop edition.
Desktop. Is it stable 12?
It's quite nice.
Well, it depends on what you call stable. This is the kind of stuff you have to do. The problem is that most of them don't have the executable bit, only X's, because the executable bit is not on FAT. So now they're executable, and now I have a very small hello world for GTK.
Yes, it's working.
So there you have it. Hello world for GTK. And that's a bit difficult to show now how small this is in red programming because I don't have the program code here. I'd have to look at the internet. But this is a very small example programmed in just a few lines. And then some people may complain that GUI hello worlds usually have a title, and then it's very easy to add a title. Or you could say that you want a nice looking window. So this is a dressed up version of hello world for the GTK binding.
Can you also color the red word red?
Well, this thing has an icon, but it's not shown here in the Mint theme. But the red icon is here in the bar, but you can't see it on the beamer.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the taskbar, there's the red icon, and here there's a button that you can click. So it has a little more, and then I hope. Oh, I don't have the complete widgets example here. That's the one I wanted to show.
And what about the lazy Sunday afternoon browser?
That's the one I tried right away. That's the one that doesn't start here on Linux Mint 12. It runs on Mint 11, but here everything's changed.
Okay.
So I don't have the extensive GTK widgets overview that I wanted to show, and I can't I can't run the browser here. So that's very annoying, but I have a number of widgets bound with a very nice dialect. I do still have, I think, the screenshots here. Let's see. Here's a screenshot of the browser. This is my own web browser showing the website for the red language that it's written in. And it's a very simple browser. It's just a proof of concept, and I wrote it in 2 hours, including the binding. That's why I called it It was on a Sunday, that's why I call it the lazy Sunday afternoon browser. It only has an address bar, that's a GTK line input widget. And the second widget is the GTK web view. And you get in one widget, you get the complete WebKit engine. So this is a browser, proof of concept browser with just 2 GTK widgets. Oh, clicking on the screenshot close button. This should be a fairly good screenshot of the rest of the GTK. Oh no, this was the very first thing. This was what I already showed on the previous SilCon, because the week before I started the GTK binding, and the first thing I had was a very simple label and an input field and a button. And this is what I already had half a year ago. And this is the very simple dialect, the way you write it. And I've smoothed it a bit since then, so it's even a bit simpler now. And, every widget is basically just a definition of one line with a few values. You have a surrounding window widget, and you give that a size and a position. And you can give it a title just by putting the title in there. And you can give it an icon very simply if you have a separate icon file. And then you have layout widgets that you can put around other widgets to change the layout. And the fixed widget needs fixed coordinates, so you give each widget inside a specific coordinate. And then here you have a label widget, just by saying a label and the title you want in the label. And here you have a field widget where you get the line entry input field. And then a button to get a close button, an OK button. You just have to give the size of the button and the label text and an action that needs to be executed as a callback when the button is clicked. And this is the definition of a function, which is predefined here. And this is the callback in Red System, which is completely compatible with C callback functions. And the only thing it does is print an assertion that the button was indeed pushed when you push it. And for that to happen, you need to pass it the widget and an optional extra data item. That's simply the way GTK callbacks are defined. See if there is anything more interesting in here. This goes beyond Syllable now, but there's not terribly much else to show. So I made for the Geo Freedom Day bindings with 2 other advanced GTK widgets, with 2 GTK map widgets. Where you, in one widget, you get a complete map browser that you can send to OpenStreetMap or several other web organizations that offer servers with maps on them. So like a web browser, you have a map browser here where you browse map servers. And here's the simplified GTK dialect. It's become even shorter. And you assume that you want a window, because you always need an outer window. And then you only say that you want it maximized, because it's a browser type window. And then you just give the title of the thing, which appears here in the title bar. And then you give the widget that you want to appear in there. And that's simply a specific map widget from the binding with the Champlain library. The other widget is from another library, but it's really very similar. It's a very slight variation because here the specific widget for that other library wants a parameter, a standard, and it wants to be passed a constructor where you get a new map, a new on-screen display. So there's just one extra parameter of a function that creates a new screen object. That's passed to the map browser object. But it's really, it looks almost the same, but it's really a very different library. Let's try if I can get some of the other bindings to work. Here's the paint program. Unfortunately, this is stuff that I probably showed half a year ago already because it was finished then. This is a demo for the SDL binding. A very simple paint program. And this can be a base for combining the OpenGL binding. If I make an OpenGL binding the coming weeks, I need to put the output somewhere on screen, and the first thing to do it would be in an SDL window. So if you combine the SDL binding and the OpenGL binding, you can have very much the same thing as PicoGL. You can project it into an SDL window that's portable between many systems and between Linux and Syllable desktop. I probably don't have 0MQ installed, so the 0MQ example probably won't work. No, can't load the 0MQ library, I'd have to install that first. So that's annoying. Valt een beetje in het water. I do see I have a few sources in here. Here's the example server for 0MQ, where you program a server that waits for 0MQ messages from clients, and you implement a client-server pattern where one client sends one message and then gets an answer from the server. So it's a sort of hello world communication. It's a client-server communication pattern. And this is the only red system code that's needed to implement such a server. You import the 0MQ binding here, and then there's some extra code that would have shown the 0MQ version number. And then here you get the real server, which is really just one screen of code, just one function. You initialize the messaging system. You open a messaging socket on a TCP network port at a specific port number. And then you wait in a loop for incoming messages. And you print them, and you print the message you got, and then you send your answer. And the corresponding client is equally small. You import the same 0MQ binding and the very same code to print the version, so it's not very interesting. And then here the client in just one screen of code. The same initialization of the connection, but then the client takes the initiative, so the client opens a socket to that specific network server, in this case running on the local host network interface. So you could demo it running on one machine, but if you change the domain name, you can run it over the network. And then you send a hello message to the server that you just connected to, and then you wait for the reply, and the server is supposed to reply with a world message that you print. And there's a small extra in there that the messages are counted. So that's actually because there's a complete failure detection in there in the 0MQ library. It encapsulates a lot of functionality, so this is really a very simple way to implement pretty advanced network communications. I've got another screenshot here. This is my web browser on a website for the Topaz language, and Topaz is another Rebel-like language, but so far it targets web apps, so it doesn't generate machine code such as Red System, and it doesn't interpret the code such as Rebel, but it generates JavaScript code so that you can run in a web browser. And if you have JavaScript installed locally, you could also run it on a server or something. So lately there's really a lot happening with Rebel inspired languages, so it's a pretty exciting time. And I intend to make many bindings for Red with open source libraries, and I intend to try to get as many of them as I can working on Syllable as well. So some of them will only run on something like Mint, because you need hardware acceleration for 3D, and others will also be able to run on Syllable Workstation, and hopefully as many of them will also be able to run on Syllable Desktop, and then you have quite a portable program. No, it's not really much more on this. Oh, there's read web page, which curl is most probably installed here. So here is an example of the curl binding that reads the red website. Oh damn! It probably has curl, but here's another version conflict. Either it doesn't have curl installed, but that's very unlikely. So it probably doesn't have version 4 of curl. It probably has apparently there's a newer version of or they changed the name somehow. But these are the incompatibilities that you encounter. This is the standard name that curl uses for its library, and somehow it's not in Mint 12, and then you have to look for why it isn't there, and which name you should use, and whether that means that the programming interface is different or not. So that's the kind of stuff you have to do manually in Red, but it also means that you have complete control over what is bound and what it's compatible with. So it's annoying, but the world is fairly chaotic, and we have to deal with it. Shall we leave it at that?
Did you answer Sue's question from the break already?
For GUIs?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to show my collection of GTK widgets, but I can't get it to run on this installation. I had it all installed on both Syllable workstations, but they don't want to display on the beamer. So, but the main thing is, if you really want a different GUI system, that's really difficult, because We already have our own GUI system in Syllable Desktop, and in 10 years or more it has turned out that nobody wants to program for it. 1 or 2 people have made programs for it, and that's it. We have to do everything ourselves, and there's really no way. If for a real system you need 10,000s of programs for it to be useful for people, and you really can't write them yourself. We can do the operating system, and that's an insane amount of work already, but we really can't also write those tens of thousands of applications. Yeah, other people have to do that, and they simply refuse to do it if it can only be done in C++, or if they aren't portable, so that they would only run on Syllable, because Syllable is too small a market for them. So you really don't get any applications if you implement your own GUI system. And then even the GUI system in Syllable Desktop is very traditional. It's our own system and it's extremely efficient, but otherwise it's very traditional, and if you make something innovative or strange, then that's an extra reason for people to not want to deal with it. So that's really very difficult. I still want to do an innovative user interface, but it's an insane amount of work, and it's extremely hard to get people to use it.
Okay, I'll see. It's difficult because you have to. There are not many people are willing to work on it because the user base is too small for them.
Yeah. Basically, what I wanted to show is that in a few months I have been able to make my own web browser, because there is a rendering engine and because there's a GTK widget on top of it. And the GTK binding is already a lot of work, because GTK is quite extensive with a lot of widgets, and it's not extremely well documented, so you have to do a lot of searching in C code, and that's very convoluted. But nevertheless, once you have the basis, I could make a web browser binding in a few hours. And the same way, in a few hours, I could make those bindings with those web browsers. And then you really have a lot of functionality for relatively little work once you've laid the basis down, because other people have made those widgets. And those widgets are only available for a few of the major toolkits, basically only for GTK and for Qt. And there are many other GUI toolkits, but all of them don't have these kinds of widgets. Even very good toolkits. I just had another look at Enlightenment, and Enlightenment has always been very interesting and very efficient and very Amiga-like, so it would have been a fairly good fit for Syllable, and it's still interesting. But even if you just make a red binding for Enlightenment, you don't have the web browser widget as far as I could find. You certainly don't have the map browsers, and there are many other widgets that you need that are not available. So there's very little incentive even to make a binding with another GUI toolkit, let alone a completely new toolkit, let alone that it would be an innovative one that will inevitably scare people.
But what I mean is not using a new kind of toolkit, but to arrange the icons or the menu system on a different way.
Yeah, that's what you can do, and that's actually what I'm still really planning right now, because by making these bindings with GTK and extensions to GTK, what you get, normally you get a web browser and you get a package of 20 megabytes or something, and it unpacks to 60 megabytes, and then you have a single web browser with a lot of junk in your screen. But what happens here is that you have a web browser widget that is a part of your GTK binding, and you can combine it as you want. I made a browser with a line input widget and a web browser widget, and you can embed that in many other applications where you simply need a small web browser field. And that's what you can do if you embed it in a binding. And normally you'd have to program that in C or C++, and it'd be difficult and a lot of work and hard to maintain. But by making everything a red dialect, it becomes much easier to combine those widgets and to maintain them and to have other people read them, because everything that's not extremely necessary, everything that's boilerplate, is left out if you design a dialect well. So that's really a reason to have Rebel or Red as a language different from pre-existing languages. And once you have that, and that's what I'm still planning, is that you can, what you say, you can rearrange your own user interface with existing elements.
Yes, that's what I mean.
That's a lot less work. And
Yes.
that's what I'm still planning to do.
But you also telling it was you have to find out a lot about the GTK widgets,
Yeah, the basic binding.
the basic binding, before you can implement these things.
Yeah, because I am implementing the binding, and
Yes.
and on top of that, I am implementing a dialect. And what for the binding, you need to know very low-level details because you need to control them, and for the dialect, you need to sweep all those details under the carpet again. All those details you just learned, you have to throw them away so that the user is not bothered with it. The user should get a dialect with the only what you really need to control, and not all the boilerplate extras that make normal GUI programming so hard. So that's why I have to do a lot of effort to make the GTK binding and the dialect on top of it. But the reason why I'm making the effort is that after that it's much easier to program in. And it's way different than programming a native syllable GUI interface in C++.
No, that's not what I intended to mention. It was more about using existing toolkits or building blocks.
Yeah, this is built on top of GTK because there are so many building blocks already in there. But the problem is that what I showed in Syllable with the 3D demos and all that is all very smooth and efficient, and you don't get that in GTK. It's much less elegant and much less efficient, and much less fun to program in. So that's what you're throwing away, but you're trading it for the fact that all those widgets are available that people have programmed over the past 10 years, or maybe 15 years. And when we started with Syllable 10 years ago, and when Atheos started 15 years ago, Atheos started in the same time period that the Qt binding started, that the Qt toolkit started in Germany, and that the GTK toolkit started in America. At the same time, Atheos started, and it had its own toolkit. And that was only logical, and it's still logical now in elegance and efficiency. But the problem is that because Atheos was a complete new system, people couldn't use it in their existing work. So nobody started programming for Atheos. Everyone started programming for GTK and Qt, and that we're 10 years further on now, and Atheos Syllable is still technically superior, but nobody wants to use it. And in those 10 years there has been so much support in GTK and Qt that if you want to make something usable within a reasonable time frame, you're almost forced to use the existing GTK or Qt. And Qt is C++, so that's very hard to bind for anything but C++. So if you have to choose between those two major ones, if you want something open source, and then if you make a language binding, then GTK is the obvious choice. but it's still, I still do it cringing because I know how much better the Syllable system is.
But you mean that the toolkits, the original toolkits of ATOs are not so well developed in comparison with GTK?
Nobody uses it.
Okay.
So we didn't know that 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Atheos started, GTK started, and Qt started. And 10 years ago, we took over Atheos, and GTK and Qt were very young and very primitive and extremely buggy and extremely messy and unelegant. And Atheos was so much better. So there, 10 years ago, there was a very reasonable expectation that you could beat them with Atheos. But the problem is it is its own operating system, and you can't use it until everything is ready, and it's too incomplete and buggy for that, and it's C++. So you can only program it in C++. And 15 years ago that was normal, but now that's not normal anymore. Everyone wants to program in Python or maybe Ruby. So and if you compare the Hello World that I wrote in red on top of GTK, if you compare that with Hello World as a native Syllable C++ program, then yeah, sorry, the Syllable toolkit wipes the floor with all the other toolkits, but the way you program the red dialect on top of GTK, almost not noticing that it is GTK, it could have been Qt or something, or Windows or Mac we are planning, but the way you program the red dialect wipes the floor with how you program in Syllable. So that's a weird conclusion. And of course, the ultimate goal is still to combine them somehow, but that's also very difficult because in hindsight, it's unfortunate that Kurt Scowen halfway he switched the GUI toolkit. He rewrote it 3 times. He rewrote the entire Atheos 3 times. And the last time he switched the GUI toolkit from C to C++ because it is so much object-oriented. And in hindsight, if he had kept programming in C, maybe we would have dominated the world by now, because then you would have been able to write bindings with all those programming languages. But now that it is in C++, like the BOS model, it's extremely hard to bind programming languages to it.
Okay.
So on this depressing note, I send you all home to lie awake at night, twisting and turning in your bed and mumbling far-reaching plans.
Very good.
Vonden jullie het toch wel leuk of lagen jullie liever te slapen?
Is dat ding, hoe zit je?